Hi, I'm Erica Jednak. I'm the COO of Yes Every Kid, and I'm partnering with Jersey First TV for our School Choice series. We are hearing from education influencers, experts, and parents from around the country and here in New Jersey on the topics that matter most. And today, we are so grateful to have Jenny Clark. She's the executive director and founder of Love Your Schools. She's a board member of the State Board of Education in Arizona, where there was really big, bold reforms recently. And she's also the co-founder of First APR. So Jenny, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Erica. I'm excited to chat more about this awesome topic.
Yes. So Jenny, why don't you tell the viewers today just a little bit more about Love Your Schools?
Sure. So Love Your School started about 4 years ago here in Phoenix, Arizona, which is also my hometown. And we started Love Your School out of a need for parents to know more about what their education options were in our state, how to navigate things like tuition tax credits and empowerment scholarships, and really have the resources to find a school that they loved that worked well for their children. So that's Love Your School. We've been doing that and loving that for the last 4 years.
Well, great, Jenny. And, we've been hearing big things out of Arizona over the past year. Could you tell the listeners in today, what did that look like? What are just some of the broad strokes and top lines of what Governor Ducey signed into law?
Yeah, absolutely. So Arizona is home to the Empowerment Scholarship Account Program, or ESA, as we call it here. And that program had been around in Arizona for just over 10 years. But the categories of who qualified for that scholarship were limited. So you had to be from a military family, or be leaving a D or F rated school, for example, or have a child that had some sort of learning disability or special need. So up until 2021, we had only about 10,000 families utilizing that scholarship program in our state. But then we had some very courageous legislators, and Representative Ben Toma is one example, who came forward and presented legislation that ultimately was passed and signed by Governor Ducey, House Bill 2853, that allowed that incredible ESA program to be universal. So what does universal mean? So universal means that every student, school-age student in Arizona, now qualifies for the ESA. And the ESA allows them to take 90% of the state allocated funding for their child's education to the education environment that works for them. That could be in a home educating environment with tutors and curriculum, possibly therapists. That means that the parent could take those dollars and go to a private school environment and utilize those funds to cover private school tuition. But now, instead of a relatively small category of families, before the qualifying category was around 150 to 200,000 students, now all 1.1 million school-age children in Arizona have access to their education dollars. So needless to say, it was a very exciting day in Arizona when that bill was signed by former Governor Ducey.
That's great, Jenny. And was the legislation bipartisan? What did some of those dynamics look like on the ground?
Yeah, absolutely. So unfortunately, the legislation was not bipartisan in Arizona, but it wasn't without effort. There are so many families that are on the current ESA program before it was universal, and of course now, since it is universal, that do hold different parties. Independents. We have a independent party you can register in Arizona, Republicans and Democrats. So even prior to universal, the number of parents that were on the program was still very diverse when it comes to political parties. But unfortunately for the universal ESA bill, it was only the Republicans in the House and in the Senate that supported that bill. But I'm always hopeful that for other states and in the future, that more families from different political parties will make their voice known. They'll reach out to their legislators that are in their parties that represent them and let them know that school choice is not just, for certain types of families. It's not just for certain political parties. It's really for everybody, because school choice improves education outcomes for all families, for all citizens, from all backgrounds, from all political parties.
And that's a very good segue, Jenny, into the lawsuit that is pending here in the state of New Jersey to end residential assignment of public schools. So it's supported by the NAACP, Latino Action Network. There's a very big umbrella of support here, and we're waiting for that outcome in the courts. But Jenny, maybe you could tell folks, what does public school access look like? Why is that piece of the puzzle important?
Yeah, public school access is so important. So, for example, in Arizona, we've had the ability to open enroll our students for decades into different school districts and also into charter schools. And that's really important because as most of us know, a lot of those residential assignments, the boundaries that have been drawn for districts that say, your family has to go here, your family has to go here. We've come to find out through research and over the years that those assignments are actually hurting students and they're hurting families. They're not giving families the flexibility to go to schools that are not only higher performing possibly, but that may also just have programming and resources that are better for their children and for their needs. And so personally, I just think that the public school is so crucial to our country, to our societies, and giving families the option to choose even between public schools is very, very, very important. So hopefully you all will be successful in that endeavor in Jersey.
Yes, we are crossing fingers, and whether or not the decision comes favorably, I am excited about the broad tent that's come forth around it. And I think it shows the public support around this too. And Jenny, maybe you can talk a little bit about why is this important for families to make those decisions versus the government or outside entities?
Absolutely. Well, we always say at Love Your School that loving families always know what's best for their children. And I think that's really our framework. It's our foundation that families, they know their children better than anyone. They know their skills, their fears, their abilities. They have hopes for their future that not even, the best teacher can know and understand at the same level as a parent. And so having parents just be at the foundation and giving them the power and the control and the ability to make better decisions for their children, regardless of that family's, background or socioeconomic status or anything related to that family, giving all families the ability to choose what's best for their children. It's really, I personally see it really as a moral issue. We need to be empowering all families, and school choice and school options, the ability to go to a better school because you can afford to live in a better district. That's not right, and it's not fair. And so we shouldn't be limiting families because of their income or their zip code.
Well, we agree, right? Solid education opportunities are for everyone, not just those who can afford them, particularly as a public good. And so here in the state of New Jersey, I think some of the questions are around logistics. How would funding work, right? And I've said we don't have to reinvent the wheel. We can look to Arizona and other states that have started to implement these bold reforms. So, Jenny, what does that look like in Arizona? What's the funding mechanism?
Yeah, so Arizona's had open enrollment for so long. It's like, oh, I don't really even, think about that sometimes. But the way that our funding essentially works is that the enrollment on the 100th day of school determines the funding that school is going to receive. And it's if I'm understanding it correctly, a lagging indicator. So it's basically a number of students enrolled on the 100th day in this year determines the funding for the next year. And I know a lot of people tend to think that there's just going to be, crazy switching in the middle of year or something like that, and that it would cause, significant barriers or challenges. But that really hasn't been the case in Arizona. The farther or the earlier, I should say, that you allow families to open enroll, in the end of one school year. So right now, like in the spring through the next year, a lot of that transition really happens at the right time. And again, you see that interdistrict transfer just being a very common, normal type thing now in Arizona. So it hasn't really put a strain, which I know can be a concern, but we haven't really seen it put the strain that maybe some people are worried about in our state. And we have a lot of open enrollment or interdistrict transferring happening here.
Yes. And I've seen a lot from you on hearing from parents, right? Because I think a lot of the missing pieces of public policy reform and work is listening to what families want. and you've been providing a platform for families to share their personal stories, their testimonials, and really be able to have a voice in this process. So I'm wondering, Jenny, what are you hearing right now from families now that we're more than a few months in with the ESA program in Arizona?
Yeah, absolutely. It's very exciting. It's amazing stories, amazing life change that's happening. You have a lot of families that essentially maybe weren't even aware of the ESA program before. And then you have a lot of families before that wanted to be on the ESA program, but maybe their child didn't qualify with whatever, learning disability or special need that they had. They weren't able to maybe get the paperwork that enabled them to have access to the program. So now that we've removed those barriers for families, we're seeing the program just grow astronomically. We went from about 12,000 families in July this year to now we have over 45,000 families, or I should say students, that are receiving the Empowerment Scholarship here in our state. And so one of the things that we love to do at Love Your School is we love to tell those stories. Whenever we meet a family or we hear about a really unique story, we pretty quickly are sending an email or saying, hey, do you want to be on camera? Do you want to, write your story out? And there's a lot of families, rightly so, that are worried about potential, pushback for sharing kind of that, they never thought they would love, an ESA or need one, but that their family does need one and how much their family is benefiting now. You have a lot of families who couldn't afford to go to a private school, which they really felt was better for their child, that are now saying, because of an ESA, our family finally has access to the private school that we've always wanted our child to go. And a lot of those private schools are specialty programs, offer specialty programs as well. So just a lot of really exciting stories, a lot of really moving, very touching stories. And we can't wait to continue to share those stories as the ESA program continues to grow in our state.
Well, that's great, Jenny. And what would you say to some of the folks who maybe are naysayers or speaking to, well, I bought my house in this neighborhood. I saved a lot of money. I pay property taxes, right? Shouldn't I get better access? What would you say to some of those parents or individuals?
Yeah. Well, one of the things, first and foremost, that we always say is, you've been paying for that privately out of pocket, but you're still a taxpayer. We think that you should have access to your education dollars also for your child that's in that school that you love, that is incredible, which is why you're there. Thankfully, in Arizona, our ESA program did allow that. It allowed families who had made lots of sacrifice over the years to put their children into a private school, sometimes even having 2 or 3 jobs. It finally gave those families access to their education dollars, which they, previously did not have access to, so they could help cover their children's tuition. So life-changing, even for current private school families. And then for those families who maybe feel like, hey, we saved up, we worked hard, we bought a house in this area for this school. The good news for you is that your school is only going to get better with more competition, and new school options are going to blossom in your state and in your community because of programs like an ESA. We're already seeing that in Arizona. I know offhand over a dozen new private schools that are launching in this state because of the ESA program, some of them coming out of fantastic maybe charter operators or private schools that basically have always wanted to launch a second campus in an area. And now, because families have access to their education dollars, they're able to launch that second, even third campus. So a lot of really, really exciting things that are only going to make education and education options better for all students, including those families who have children at an existing private school.
That's great. And Jenny, there's a lot of parents listening right now here in New Jersey who are struggling and perhaps with the property taxes and not sure if they have to move to find the better school for their kid or, even closer to their work. So what would you recommend for parents listening today? How can they be their own advocates? How can they get involved with the legislative process? Understanding that Jersey First is a great grassroots organization here to get plugged into.
Yeah, absolutely. So parents absolutely need to connect with local advocacy organizations. That's why I'm so thankful that Jersey First, that you guys are doing that work. Parents need to reach out. You need to say that you want to be involved and ask, How can I help? What can I do? Writing letters, writing emails, having meetings with legislators, that is crucial to advancing this type of legislation or any school choice legislation in your state. Being willing to be, videoed and on camera, posting videos to your own social media, doing your own kind of organic reels and stories to let people that are just, following you on maybe like Twitter or Instagram, letting them know, do you guys know that other states have all of these incredible options, that they have open enrollment, that they have charter schools, that they have ESAs? Why don't we have that in our state? And I think the more that you talk about it, the more that you can educate even your small little network. It is so impactful in getting these types of programs into law in other states. And so everyone can do everything. I know that there are so many really busy parents working multiple jobs. And so just think about your close, unique network. Maybe it's just your extended family, or maybe it's, a group through school or through church or through work, and just having those conversations, because once families know what other states are getting, what other options they have, it really spreads like wildfire, and you just can't be too much of an advocate when it comes to these issues, because these programs and these opportunities are really life-changing for our kids.
Yes, and we're really seeing legislative momentum around the country right now between Iowa, Arkansas, Utah, Florida. There are states and legislators who are stepping up to the table to really put forth some of these more bold programs. And so we're definitely excited to watch here from Jersey. But Jenny, how can listeners here today, how can they follow you? Do you have a social media handle? How can they find out more about Love Your Schools?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. So we are on several different social media channels. We are on Instagram as Love Your School AZ, and then we're slowly building out Instagrams for our different states. We also are in West Virginia, so we have a Love Your School WV on Instagram, and then we're on Twitter at iHeartMySchool. So we'd love for you to follow us there. Of course, we're on Facebook also, just as Love Your School as well.
Well, Jenny, thank you so much for your time today, and for all of the Jersey First viewers. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is Jersey First TV, the School Choice Series, and we look forward to hearing from you soon. Take care.